And so we are back for the last part, which was supposed to be part 4. Now I'm naming it part 3.3, 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And we want to finally compare the scripture we were reading, St. John's Gospel, chapter 6, 12, and 13, to St. Mark's Gospel, chapter 8, 8. Now the particular miracle of John 6 is also to be found in Mark chapter 6 if you want to have a read of that. So it says, so they did eat, and they were filled, and they took up of the broken meat that was left 7 baskets. Meat here means the bread and the fish that they were eating. Now in Mark uses a different type of word for filled or satisfied. The text should read, and so they did eat, and they were satisfied, as opposed to filled. The word used in John is more closely associated with filled, whereas the word used in Mark really means to satisfy. The Greek word for it is ekothasen, which is a little different from the word that was used before, that mean to fill up in a way that will satisfy, fill up a vessel, for example. Whereas here, this word really has a connotation to feed or to fatten, as in how you would bring an animal to a feeding trough and allow them to eat, and fatten themselves. And the word comes from the Greek word korotos, which means a feeding place of grass or food. And so I want us to think about the idea here, the connotation, that when they were dealing with the Gentiles, the text used a slightly different perspective, that they were being fattened, fed to be fattened, to be satisfied. And so they were out on a pasture, and this pasture that these new sheep, because these are new sheep, would be on was the pasture of the word that he was preaching. And the word didn't swell them up as it did in John per se. The word fattened them, so it means that they were lacking substance all along, because of course they were Gentile, and now Jesus, he was allowing them to feed on the pasture until they needed to feed no more. And so what we understand here is that when we have some experience in the word, in the promises, as the Hebrews would have had at that time, those experiences meant that they had some background, some basis to go on. But the Gentiles really didn't have that. And so he didn't just give them the food to fill them up, to top up what they had in them. He gave them it for them to feed or fatten themselves. And filling up is a little different from fattening if we think about it. Because when we fatten is not to swell. Fatten means that we add in an extra layer. We add in something that wasn't there before that is going to be more permanent. To fill up really means that, you reach the top and you can't go anymore, so you stop. And so fatten is sort of a long-term condition. And we have to understand that the sort of Gentile nation was allowed to be fattened because they hadn't had the opportunity before, really, to get to this level of closeness with the Creator. So he fattened them with the food. They weren't as hungry, I suppose, physically as the Jews were, probably, because he just fattened them up. So they were doing well, probably a little bit more well than the Jews, but spiritually they were really in need of what he was saying. They wanted really to hear and to experience what he was saying. And then, of course, the other thing is that in the previous text, they use the Greek word sonagete, which means to gather together, to pull them back together, because they're being separated. But now the word being used in Mark, and he uses this word in his other examples, is Iran, which means to raise or to lift up. So the part that says, and they took up, or they picked up the broken meat or the bread that was left over, really means to raise up or to lift. And here it gives us a very clear idea that the whole purpose is not to bring them back together, because that is not what it's about here with the Gentiles. It's about lifting or raising them up. And in other parts of the scripture where this particular word Iran was used, has the connotation of being used to pick something up out from the depths, as in the depths of the sea, or to raise up somebody from the dead or from the grave, or to pick up a stone off of the ground. So it means that this food that they were getting, this, and I'm talking here about the word, not the physical bread, has the ability, has uh, the potential, the propensity to raise them up, to bring them to a higher level of understanding, a higher level of grace, a higher level of sort of communion, a higher level of a higher standard of living. And so it's left to us to understand that this is also what it's going to do for us if we take it in the way that they took it, like, like children, where we're just believing it for the sake of it alone, and believing it without any doubt or fear. And once we do that, and we, whatever is put before us, because they shared among the Jews, but they put this stuff out for them to take what they wanted. In this case in Mark, if we read the other parts of the text. And so whatever is put before us, that we take it and we make the best out of it. And for me, this is a wonderful example of a play of words. And I like the idea of to raise or to lift up, because it means that I was not in a place where I should have been. And through this miraculous word, through this good doctrine, through this understanding, through this new learning that I have, that is going to take me and bring me to a higher height, bring me to achieve more, to do more. And I really do love what this word means for us, especially for many of us who believe that we are Gentiles, although we may not be Gentiles. Some of us believe that it means for us that it can really get us to somewhere where we weren't. And we had no opportunity before to hear this, to learn this, to understand this, to be partakers of this. And now all of a sudden we have the opportunity to partake and to learn of it. And I find that quite wonderful, that the opportunity is there. And once you utilize the opportunity, these same apostles are going to come and reap you by picking up, lifting up. They're going to support you in the way that you need to be supported. The other thing is that the 7 baskets, and we'll talk about the 7, but I want to focus on the word baskets. The word means actually 7 large baskets. So the Greek word is spiridas, which means a large basket for carrying provisions. So not a small basket as was in John, which is a basket for fat bread. This is a large basket. The capacity of the basket is greater. And let's understand that he said, greater things that ye will do than I did if you believe. So the capacity for the Gentile nation is that the Gentiles can overtake the Jews. And if we go back to the original promises made, it was said to Esau that one day you will overtake your brother Jacob. It was also said to the children of Edom that one day the children of Edom will overtake the nation of Israel. And so several of these promises were made, and people get confused because they think, well, only Jews were blessed. But really, and in fact, Ishmael was blessed, Edom was blessed, Ham also had his own blessing, although people have other thoughts about it. He led to the children of Edom. Esau had his own blessing as well, and he created a whole nation of people, and we should go into that at one time. The nations of the Gentiles, of course, we'll go into that at one time in the future. So all of them had their little thing going on in their little nations, and they had an inferiority complex. And I want to say to many people these days have an inferiority complex. They don't think that they're good enough. And here it really points out to us that once we buy into this, we really buy into it, we really focus on it, do it, we really practice it, that there is a larger blessing. There is a sort of a larger place to go to, a higher place, a better place, way beyond what the people who were practicing it for all the time had. And I love that idea that we have the ability to get large baskets as opposed to small ones. And of course, we love everything bigger and better. And then the other part, of course, is here they had 7 baskets. And the 7 baskets, traditionally, theologians think is representative of the 7 Gentile nations. that were around them. And I can't remember all of the names, but people like the Jebusites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Amalekites, and all of these, the Jerusites, all these people were sort of nations around them at the time. But if we really go back to the scripture, there are more than 7 Gentile nations. So although the theologians believe this is representative of the 7 Gentile nations, I think what it really should be is representative of the coming together, or the unification of the Gentile nations. So those are all of the children of Ham and the trend of Japheth, because it was the trend of Shem who received the further blessing to become the nation of Israel. So the trend of Ham really and the trend of Japheth were the ones that had, some problems accessing this doctrine, accessing this level of grace. Although they did great mighty things physically, they didn't really excel as such, sort of the spiritual plane. And the idea here is that, of course, again, the 7 represents completion, wholeness, and the connotation of future fulfillment. But I love the idea that we have seven large baskets. And when we start to compare the 2 bits, we understand something else. And I think a lot of people may miss this. We had 5 loaves and 2 fishes, feeding 5,000 men, plus women and children, and it may have been another 5,000. And then here we have 7 loaves, so we had more loaves and several small fishes feeding 4,000, and there was 7 baskets left over, as verses 12. That's why I want us to understand that the needs of people may be different, and the needs of the Jews meant that there were 12 small baskets left over from what they had, and the needs of the Gentiles meant that there were 7 large baskets left over. Now, I don't know which one is a bigger miracle, because we didn't weigh or measure the baskets, but what I really think very strongly is that the idea here is that, 1, of course, the provision is enough for everyone, but 2, that the feeding of those who are under the paling and those who are outside the paling is a little different, and the needs are different. And although the Gentiles had seemed to be less spiritual, there was more fruit at the end of it, right? And there was more fruit, and everything was sort of on an equal basis. There were 7 loaves and there were 5 loaves, and they had a lot more at the end. So they were fattened, but they didn't overdo it, I suppose. And the others were filled, and in their filling they probably needed a bit more because they were filled and they didn't leave over very much, which is characteristic of that group of people. And so we have to understand that we have the ability to go further and to do more. And this lesson, I think, really, this piece of scripture in this lesson really opens up that possibility for us that we can do more. So the idea here is that we as well have to understand that the treatment of the different groups according to their needs, and he is able to meet all our needs regardless to what our belief system is and what we believe or don't believe, or what we fear, what we don't fear. He is more than able, and when he does it according to his grace and not according to our understanding. And this is why he asked the disciples, did you not understand what I did? I fed both people. I didn't feed the Jews alone because my mission was not to the Jews. My mission is to all people. And when I fed all of them, there was always something left over for another day, for another time. There was always extra provision because I can provide. And it's important for us to understand that. And I think he also had the idea to show them that they ought to treat with everyone equally. Because just as they had to share for the Jews, they had to share for the Gentiles. And of course, at that time, the Jews and the Gentiles had no dealings one with the next. And so it was important to get that bit of training that we have to deny ourselves and put away ourselves completely. You know, the scornfulness and the hatred and the segregation and the racism and the differentiation and discrimination really has to be put away for us to access the level of grace that is promised unto us in the kingdom. So the kingdom is not about one person. The kingdom is about all people. The kingdom is about providing for all people according to their needs. And it's not about equality, but it's about equity of needs. So I hope that this blessed your heart. And of course, in our WhatsApp group, we'll be having further discussions on these pieces of scripture, on these texts that are being put up by a video for you on YouTube.